A young child's imagination is probably the most critical component of their overall development. Kids, their natural habitat is to be outside, making shapes out of clouds, scuffling up their knees, playing with their friends, and so forth. Every time we park them in front of a screen, any kind of a device, what we're doing is we're stripping them away from their natural habitat. That's where kids are supposed to be. They're supposed to be out and about, interacting, and utilizing their minds. Another part of this is the following. You can't find really any kid nowadays that has ever really been bored. So I think back to when I was a kid, we were bored all the time. If it was a rainy day, there wasn't much on TV, and we would become creative. We would make forts out of the bunk beds. We'd play hide and go seek in the house. And if it was a nice summer day out, we'd be doing that kind of stuff, making shapes out of clouds, playing manhunt, doing things that were very creative, building things and so forth. But every time that we keep our kids indoors, they're outside of their natural habitat. It's kind of like putting a lion in a cage when it's young and then expecting it to be able to do what it's supposed to do in its natural habitat. It won't be able to do it. So keep that in mind, folks. It's so important. Boredom, I always say, and I heard this somewhere once before, boredom is the miracle grow for the mind and the emotions. Now, boredom is essentially just sitting and thinking and not really having anything else to do. But kids today, like I mentioned, have never really been bored, okay? And why is boredom so important? Because it is the area in our mental space where we're actually in control of our thinking. We're daydreaming intentionally. We're thinking about, kids are thinking about, their goals, their aspirations, and so forth. But whenever we take that away from them and they're parked in front of a screen, it's almost like they're just hypnotized and their thoughts are now controlled for them. Their thoughts, their minds are just there's that information that's constantly just driven into that subconscious part of the mind, and they're not the masters of their own thinking. Instead, they're what Friedrich Nietzsche, the famous philosopher, said, they're being thought. He had a quote, it went like this: we're under the impression that we're thinking, but in reality we're being thought. And what he meant by that is that we're controlled by our thinking. So the more time our kids spend on social media, playing video games, whatever it is with a screen, watching news information online and all that stuff, their minds are being controlled for them, okay, instead of them controlling their own minds. And even when they're not doing that, all of that information that's been input subconsciously into their minds is now what is orbiting around in their subconscious universe when they're just daydreaming, all right? And a lot of that is often filled with, fear, doubt, worry, comparing oneself to everybody else. So we have to make sure that our kids have healthy doses of downtime, healthy doses of intentional silence. I call it in my book, I call it seeking silence. And if we could teach our kids to sit every day for 15 minutes and just seek silence, they now have an idea of what's going on deep inside of them, and they will begin to learn the processes of mental control, self-directing their thoughts, developing an attitude of gratitude, visualizing what their goals are, thinking about everything in life that they love, instead of letting the outside influences do that for them.
Great.